My husband and I have been reborn. On our honeymoon, we got into a car accident and ended up as the parents of the villain in the cheesy novel I read last night. The villain is a pitiful soul. His father is a domineering CEO with a white moonlight in his heart, and his mother is a supporting female character who got pregnant to secure her position. No one cared about him, and he eventually became a moody, introverted big boss. But my husband and I are different. As a funny girl and him as a cheerful, sunny boy, we refuse to believe we can't raise a child well. Later, 5-year-old Simon blinked his big eyes and looked at me pleadingly. Mom, can you stop Dad from dancing? It's so embarrassing. I put down the large red banner in my hand. No way, son, you're going up there too. Mom will cheer for your dad and you. Come on, let the world feel the power of the extroverts. My name is Julia. And I just got married to my childhood sweetheart Lucas 2 days ago. We are on our way to the airport for our honeymoon. Thinking about the cringy CEO romance novel I read in bed last night makes me feel all sorts of uncomfortable. To highlight the male lead's difficult love journey, the author had to create a villainous male supporting character, and to justify his actions, gave him a tragic backstory, unloved by his father and mother. Just because the female lead showed him a little warmth in his childhood, he became utterly devoted to her, seeing her as his son. With years of novel reading experience, I absolutely detest the cliches of these CEO romance novels. Can't they come up with some fresh plots? As for why I still keep reading, it's because the annoying male lead in this book is also named Lucas, the same as my husband. Curiosity drove me to slog through this pile of garbage. Lucas walked by my side, listening to my endless complaints while holding my hand to cross the street. The green light was on, and just as we reached the middle of the crosswalk, a large truck lost control not far from us, charging recklessly in our direction. There was no time to avoid it. The last thing I remember was Lucas's terrified voice and his trembling yet warm embrace. When I woke up again, I was in a bed, dazedly opening my eyes. The first thing I saw was a man's bare back. I gasped, almost unable to hold back a scream, because this figure was definitely not Lucas. Where is my big, strong husband? Just as I was in shock, the naked man turned over, and his handsome face immediately stunned me. My anxious mood was slightly soothed. What can I say? Julia, am just that shallow. While I was admiring him, the naked man slowly opened his eyes. Seeing me, he immediately pulled the blanket over his upper body. Just as he was about to let out a scream, I shouted first, Lucas. At that moment, the handsome naked man, also known as Donald, paused. His eyes were filled with unconcealed shock. Julia, is that you? Just now, seeing his behavior, I suspected he was my husband, and now I'm even more certain. Thank heavens, we didn't die. I finally managed to marry my dear wife, and we haven't even had our honeymoon yet. It's a relief we came back to life. Thank goodness. Watching Donald, with his handsome face, clasp his hands together and bow repeatedly in all directions. I gave him a disdainful pat. Although we made it through, the different faces and environment all indicate that this is not our original world. This carefree guy still isn't in a hurry. Just as I was about to say something, a headache struck me. After a moment, I finally figured out our current situation. Damn it, I actually time traveled. And I ended up in that domineering CEO novel I heavily criticized this morning. Lucas and I, as if by some twist of fate, became the major villains. No. At this point, we should be the minor villains' parents, Lucas and Lucy. The current timeline is the tail end of their seemingly peaceful married life. Tonight, Lucas's white moonlight, Bella, is returning to the country. The moment Bella's plane lands, Lucas's entire heart will be glued to her, and he will no longer care about his wife and child. Seeing her husband like this, Lucy tried every means to make things difficult for Bella. However, Lucas, who had finally reunited with his beloved, would not allow anyone to harm her. Thus, the couple ended up hurting each other. Not only that, but in order to get Lucas's attention, Lucy even resorted to abusing Simon, giving him cold baths to make him feverish. Just to call Lucas home was a common tactic. When Lucas remained unmoved, the psychologically disturbed Lucy would severely punish Simon, depriving him of food for 3 days, whipping his back with bamboo sticks, and so on. Her actions were so despicable that Julia once lashed out at her in fury. During the gaps in my recollection, Lucas also received the original host's memories. Combined with my constant complaints in the morning, we suddenly locked eyes and said in unison, "Our son." We scrambled out of bed, wanting to rush over to show some warmth to our cheap son, not because we had a sudden pang of conscience, but because we genuinely needed to save our own lives. In the original book, the antagonist Simon's first targets after growing up were his own parents. Generally speaking, antagonists with tragic backgrounds tend to have extremely sharp minds, and Simon was no exception. After graduating from college and starting his own company, he immediately brought down Lucas's company, gathered evidence of his father's tax evasion, and sent him straight to prison. As for his mother, her fate was even worse, to retaliate for the abuse she inflicted on him in his childhood. Simon arranged for someone to break Lucy's legs and then sent her to a shady nursing home. He instructed the caregivers there to abuse her as much as possible, as long as they kept her alive. Lucy's final fate was to die on a nursing home bed, covered in bedsores, emaciated, and reeking of a foul odor. Thinking about each other's outcomes, Lucas and I couldn't help but want to hold Simon in the palms of our hands, determined to give him the warmest childhood. As soon as I opened the door, I saw a little boy standing at the doorway. He had delicate features and was holding a small bear in his arms. If I remember correctly, it was a gift Lucy had given him on his 3rd birthday. With teary eyes, he stared at Lucas and me and asked in a kitten-like voice, "Mom and Dad, were you arguing?" Simon is 4 years old this year. Although Lucy and Lucas never argued in front of him, the atmosphere at home was often tense, mostly cold and devoid of warmth. Sometimes the three of them would be under the same roof yet not exchange a single word all day. I suppose Simon must have heard Lucas's short, sharp cry and came to check, watching Simon pretend to be calm while tightly clutching the teddy bear, his fingers turning white from the force. My heart couldn't help but tighten, and I felt an automatic urge to step into the role of his mother. Such an adorable child. I don't know how Lucy could bring herself to do it. While silently criticizing in my heart, I spoke gently. "Mommy and Daddy weren't arguing, sweetie. Daddy just accidentally bumped into the corner and cried out in pain, right, honey?" I nudged my dazed husband beside me, secretly glaring at him, a little annoyed at his distraction. Sensing my gaze, Lucas felt a chill run down his spine. He was a true henpecked husband and would absolutely never go against his wife's wishes. "Yes, sweetie, Mom and Dad are fine. Why are you up already? It's only 6 o'clock, and it's the weekend. No school today. Go back to sleep for a while, okay?" Lucas said as he bent down to pick up Simon and carried him toward his room. A moment later, Lucas returned after settling Simon down. At this moment, I am standing in front of the mirror, admiring Lucy's beauty. It must be said, although Lucy is a malicious woman, her looks are nothing to scoff at. Otherwise, the original Lucas wouldn't have put up with her for so long. "Honey, we've hit the jackpot. The Smith family's company is worth billions. Now we can finally stop grinding away in this rat race." I looked up and saw Lucas's lively, animated face, his eyes sparkling as he enthusiastically imagined this sudden, unexpected life of wealth. "Stop thinking about all that nonsense. Just think about the ending of this novel. What are we going to do?" I sat on the bed with a dejected look, glancing at Lucas, who was still lost in his own imagination. Seeing me like this, Lucas finally straightened his expression, came to my side, and held my hand, saying, "Don't be afraid, I'm here with you. Since we're here, we might as well make the best of it. As long as we raise Simon well and prevent him from turning dark, the ending of our lives will definitely be different." Hearing his comforting words, I finally felt much better, since I couldn't sleep anyway. Lucas and I decided to start our life of raising a child. Step 1 to being model parents, cooking for the child. The Smith family's house is a 3-story villa. Because Lucas dislikes having strangers at home, and Lucy desperately tries to please him, she does all the cooking when Lucas is home. Only when he goes to work does the housekeeper come to clean. Today is Sunday, which is Lucas's day off, so there's no one else in the house besides us. I took out an apron and tied it around Lucas's waist. That's right, it's Lucas who cooks. We grew up together since childhood as childhood sweethearts, and our families have been close friends for generations. However, when we were 18, both sets of our parents died in the same plane crash while on vacation. I only remember that we cried our hearts out during that time, and it was only by relying on each other that we managed to get through it. From then on, we depended on each other for survival. Though we say we relied on each other, it was more like Lucas endured the grief while taking care of me. Lucas and I are the two people in this world who understand each other the most. Thinking of this, I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. Even if I've transmigrated into a book, it doesn't matter. After all, in that world, we no longer have anyone to worry about. As Simon came downstairs, he saw this scene. Dad was frying eggs, while Mom hugged him around the waist, saying something. At that moment, Dad turned his head slightly and gave Mom a kiss on the cheek, making her laugh and playfully protest. How long had it been since he had seen his parents interact like this? Little Simon couldn't quite remember. All he knew was that his family seemed different from others. Other children had their parents pick them up after school, but he was always picked up by Uncle James. Now, looking at this scene before him, for some reason, he just felt a sourness in his heart and really wanted to cry. As I turned my head, I saw a small figure leaning against the kitchen door, with what seemed like tears glistening in their eyes. "What's wrong, sweetie? Are you feeling unwell somewhere?" I walked toward Simon and asked with a concerned expression. Simon shook his head and timidly called out, "Mom, Dad." Hearing this, I didn't say anything more and just took his hand, leading him toward the dining room. Lucas followed closely behind, carrying breakfast. The golden fried eggs and the milky aroma of the bread slices on the plate gave off a delicious smell. Though simple, this was the first time in Simon's memory that his father had made breakfast. Watching Simon obediently pick up the milk and drink it all in one go, I felt my heart was about to melt from how adorable he was. After breakfast, I gave Lucas a meaningful look, and he immediately spoke up. "Sweetie, both Mom and Dad are home today. How about we take you to the amusement park?" Simon's eyes clearly lit up. He looked at Lucas, then at me, but didn't say a word. My heart softened, and I gently patted his head, saying, "For such a long time, Mom and Dad have been neglecting you because of work. We apologize to you. Starting today, we will definitely make family our priority. Give us a chance to make it up to you. Let's go to the amusement park together." "Okay." Simon gave a big, and finally showed a smile on his face. Simon drove a car out of the garage and took the two of us, mother and son, to the nearest amusement park. This was also the largest amusement park invested in by Lucas Corporation. Watching Simon stare at the children playing bumper cars, I immediately decided that the first activity would be that. Lucas went to buy tickets, and I sat with Simon on a stone bench waiting for him. Suddenly, a little boy came running from a distance. He was dressed exquisitely, clearly a child from a wealthy family. He saw Simon and shouted at him, "You poor wretch, your father doesn't want you anymore. You don't deserve to play in my family's playground." His mother stood right behind him, smiling as she watched her son make faces at Simon, not making any move to stop him, watching them act as if no one else exists. I can't help but feel a surge of anger. It's also Lucy's fault for being so unambitious, focusing solely on pleasing her husband. Everyone in their circle knows Lucy is a simp, and no one respects her, not even her children, who are bullied as a result. Seeing this woman, I had an impression in my mind. She is the wife of a company president, and her son is in the same class as Simon. Her husband also has a partnership with Lucas's company, and the reason they dare to act so recklessly is because they are certain that Lucas despises the two of us, mother and son. Looking at Simon's dejected expression but not daring to say much, before I could do anything, a voice came from behind. "Mrs. James, how would I know that I don't want my own child? Does Mr. James know that this is how your son treats my son?" Lucas walked over from not far away, his expression unusually serious. "It seems Mr. James is not very welcoming of our family at this amusement park. I don't know when the park under the Smith family group became yours. I think we don't need to cooperate anymore, or who knows, one day my company might even change its name to James." That woman, Mr. James's wife, Mia, clearly didn't expect to run into Lucas here, nor did she expect him to be so protective of his wife and child. But isn't it rumored that their family relationship is strained? It seems that's completely untrue now. Mia was clearly flustered. If her husband found out that she and her son had ruined the cooperation with the Smith family, he would definitely divorce her. Who knows which vixen would take her place as Mrs. James then? That's not the case, Mr. Smith. The child was just saying it casually for fun. You adults are magnanimous, so please don't take it to heart. With that, she nudged her son and urged, "Hurry up and apologize to young Master Smith." The little boy was confused by his mother's attitude. Hadn't he mocked Simon in front of his mother before, and she even said he was right? Why did he have to apologize now? The spoiled child pushed his mother's hand away and wailed, I don't want to apologize to this Jinx. Didn't you say he was a little bastard before? Mom, listening to the child's unrestrained words, Mia couldn't hold back any longer and slapped her precious son across the face, although she felt sorry for the child. Saying such things in the current situation was just asking for trouble. Watching this farce unfold, I picked up Simon and walked toward Lucas. Lucas took the child from my arms, placing one hand under his knee and patting his back with the other, comforting the bewildered child. There's no need to apologize. From now on, the cooperation between our two companies is officially terminated. You'd better think more about how to explain this to Mr. James. After saying that, we turned and left without looking back, ignoring the child's crying and the woman's screams behind us. Lucas lowered his head and saw Simon looking up at him with admiration. His heart ached, even though he had traveled through time, seeing such a sensible and pitiful child. He couldn't help but feel heartbroken, so he held him even tighter in his arms, and for Simon, this was the first time his father had ever held him since he could remember. So he quietly snuggled closer into his father's embrace. I watched the interaction between the father and son, smiled, and quickly caught up with their pace. Putting aside this little episode, Simon had an exceptionally fun day today. The most direct sign was that he kept calling out to us, sometimes calling for Dad, sometimes for Mom, without saying what he wanted, just staring at us with a silly grin. At night, just as Simon and I had turned off the lights and were about to sleep, the door suddenly opened a crack, and a little head appeared at the edge. Lucas was the first to speak. What's up, baby? I then said, do you want to sleep with Mommy and Daddy, sweetie? Simon nodded and moved a little closer. By the light from the crack in the door, I could see him standing there barefoot, holding his teddy bear. My heart immediately ached for him. I got out of bed, picked him up, and said, why aren't you wearing shoes, sweetie? Then you can sleep here with us tonight. Ignoring Lucas's slightly resentful gaze, I placed Simon between the two of us. Baby, you're so big now, let it slide this time, but next time you have to sleep by yourself. Okay, Mommy belongs to Daddy. When you grow up, you can find your own wife. Lucas spoke with a tone of resentment, and I pinched him hard, saying, the child is right here. What nonsense are you talking about? Turning around, I gently said to Simon, don't listen to your dad, you can come sleep with us whenever you want. Baby, Mom and Dad will always be here for you. With that, I hugged him and pulled up the covers. Lucas could only sigh helplessly and held me tighter. In a daze, I felt like I had forgotten something important, but I couldn't resist the drowsiness and eventually fell asleep. The next day was Monday, step 2 of being model parents, taking the child to school. Lucy doesn't have a job. Her daily task is to follow Lucas around. And since Lucas is the company president, being a bit late doesn't really matter, so we all decided to take the children to school together. Lucas was making breakfast, and I went to Simon's room to wake him up. Sweetie, it's time to get up. Today, Mom and Dad will take you to school together. Simon, who was still in a daze, suddenly became wide awake. He opened his eyes and asked in disbelief, really, Mom, both you and Dad are taking me? Seeing his wide-eyed, adorable expression, I smiled and said, yes. Dad is already making breakfast. Come down to eat after you wash up. Do you need Mom's help? Simon's little face flushed slightly. No need, Mom, I can do it myself. I'm a big boy now. You can just wait for me downstairs. Hearing this, I didn't say anything more and turned to go downstairs. After breakfast, Lucas drove us to the kindergarten. Along the way, we all tried our best to engage Simon in conversation, and it was quite successful. The car was filled with laughter the entire time. When we arrived at the school gate, I first carried Simon out of the car and, holding his hand, walked toward the entrance. Hello, is this Simon's mom? I'm his homeroom teacher. This Friday, our kindergarten is hosting a parent-child event. Will Simon be participating this year? The speaker was a cheerful young woman in her early 20s. I remember her. She is a very responsible kindergarten teacher. When Lucy didn't participate in any parent-child activities, it was she who comforted Simon. And she always took good care of him. The past is the past, and the present is the present. This year, we absolutely must attend the parent-child event. Of course, teacher, Simon can be a handful at school, so thank you for looking after him. His father and I will definitely be there on time this Friday. After thanking the teacher and handing Simon over to her, I planned to discuss the matter with Lucas. As soon as I got into the car, before I could even speak, Lucas's phone rang. Brother Lucas. Why didn't you come to pick me up last night? I came back to the country just for you. Once the call connected and I heard that sweet, coquettish voice, I finally realized what I had forgotten. Damn it, I actually forgot about that White Lotus. Although this isn't a romantic debt caused by the current Lucas, it still has something to do with him. Lucas also reacted to the voice, immediately looking at me pitifully. I didn't say anything, wanting to see how he would handle it. Miss Bella. Please don't call me anymore, I'm not close with you, and if you keep this up, my wife will get jealous. With that, he immediately hung up the phone, blocked and deleted her in one go, no longer willing to listen to what Bella had to say next. Honey, you know this was something this body attracted before. It has nothing to do with me, I'll always love only you. As he said this, he tugged at my sleeve and shook it gently, watching Lucas busy trying to prove his loyalty. I couldn't help but laugh. Having grown up together and relied on each other for so many years, I still trusted him deeply. I was just teasing him earlier, recalling the plot from the book. In the original story, Lucas had gone to pick her up at the airport last night. When they met again, they were inseparable. Chatting late into the night at the hotel. Today, he even took Bella to visit his company. It's worth noting that even Lucy had to make an appointment to see him at his office, which shows how highly Lucas regarded Bella in the original storyline. During dinner, before they started eating, I stood up, cleared my throat, and said, "Now, we're going to hold the first family meeting. The topic is the parent-child event this Friday. Each family is required to prepare a performance. What are your thoughts on this?" "You too." Lucas was the first to agree with me. "I can dance." Since returning from the amusement park, the bond between father and son has skyrocketed. Now, Simon is like his own biological child. Whenever both are at home, he's sure to stick close to his dad. "Then I'll dance with Dad." Simon happily agreed, but, innocent and unaware, he had no idea that on Friday, he would come to understand the true meaning of the term, social death. I stifled a laugh and agreed with their decision. "Dad, you look like a mutated Pikachu in this thing." Simon crouched in the corner of the changing room, his face screaming, "Don't come near me." Lucas spun around in front of the mirror, the fluffy tail on the back of his pink bunny onesie leaving a blur with the movement. He adjusted the crooked bunny ears on his head. "Son, this is a limited edition parent-child set your mom specially ordered online." "More like a limited edition of humiliation," Simon grumbled, tugging at the same style children's bunny suit and stubbornly refusing to put on the left leg. As the prelude to Two Tigers began playing in the kindergarten auditorium, he jolted and darted toward the door. "There's still time to make a run for it." "What are you running for?" I jumped out from behind the curtain, holding up my phone, the camera perfectly aimed at the father and son. "Your dad broke two of my vases in the living room last night just to learn this bunny dance. This historic moment must go down in the family history." "Oh honey, your tail's caught in the door." Simon, stuck in the doorway and unable to move forward or back, heard the announcement from the stage. "Next up, the Simon family from the Moon class will perform Rabbit Rhapsody." Desperate, he watched as his mom forced the child-sized bunny costume over his head, only to notice that all the other parents backstage were dressed in proper suits and formal attire. "Didn't they say all parents had to perform?" Lucas's voice began to tremble. "Oh, maybe I misread the group notice." I gave the two of them a push toward the stage as camera flashes lit up the audience like a galaxy. Simon clung desperately to the curtain, refusing to let go, watching in horror as his dad hopped onto the stage with clumsy, mismatched steps, his pink fluff exploding under the spotlight like a dandelion come to life. Over 30 phones in the audience were raised in unison. Lucas froze in place for 3 seconds before starting to sway left and right. I, who had been laughing to tears in the audience, suddenly sat up straight. That uncoordinated man was making a crooked heart shape with his hands, aimed right at his son. Seeing this, Simon's previously stiff body gradually relaxed. In his memory, it seemed his father had never expressed affection toward him. Now, he only felt his eyes stinging, as if something was about to fall. A moment later, he sniffled and, following the music, joined his father in performing this parent-child act. After it ended, the audience erupted in thunderous applause, and I smiled as I welcomed the returning father and son. Even though they were sweating profusely inside the costumes, the two of them seemed completely unaffected, still chatting and laughing excitedly. At that moment, Simon finally looked like a normal child. I watched as Lucas picked up his son and followed them home. Life went on in its usual uneventful way. I had thought that after being blocked by Lucas, Bella would have the sense to stay away, but to my surprise, it wasn't long before I saw her in person again, at the Smith family group's anniversary cocktail party. The crystal chandelier refracted the champagne tower into a waterfall of crushed diamonds. Swirling my glass of red wine, I watched Bella sashay toward Lucas in her 10-centimeter red-soled high heels. "Brother Lucas, can you teach me how to analyze a merger case?" She leaned forward, pressing the documents against her chest, her perfume so strong it could suffocate a tank of koi fish. Lucas leisurely adjusted his cufflinks, the iris pattern on his dark gray suit shimmering under the light. I had picked it out for him myself this morning. He always gladly accepted anything I gave him. "Miss Bella," he lifted his eyelids, "your father begged me just last week to acquire his nearly bankrupt electronics factory, and now you bring me this fake ledger." His slender fingers pinched the document. "You can't even align the decimal points properly." Bella's smile froze at the corners of her mouth. I nearly choked on my champagne. No wonder this green tea bitch had been so quiet all these days, only to show up now and approach Lucas. So this was her game. However, Lucas suddenly stood up, his 185 centimeters frame exuding an intimidating presence that made Bella instinctively take half a step back. He took the platinum pen from his chest pocket and signed the document with a flourish. "There's a psychiatric hospital in the southern part of the city that needs investment. I think it would be the perfect place for Miss Bella to showcase her acting skills." Suppressed snickers echoed all around. Bella's carefully styled air bangs trembled as she suddenly grabbed a champagne glass and splashed it toward me. Lucas pulled me into a spin, and the wine splashed entirely onto his back, staining his dark gray suit with a deep red wine mark. "Security," he said without turning his head. "Please escort this lady to sober up." Watching Bella being led away with a contorted expression, I couldn't help but feel sorry for her, a woman whose heart only clings to men, hoping to gain without effort through them. How pitiful. During bedtime story time that night, Simon lay across my lap playing with his Iron Man action figure. "Mom, Teacher Alice said today that bad people get taken away by monsters, right? Even more terrifying than that." Lucas walked in while drying his hair. "Otherwise, Dad will send you to Africa to mine." I glared at him. "Don't scare the child." "I'm not scared at all." The little brat jumped up and struck an Ultraman pose. "Dad is Tiga, Mom is Zero, I'm Zet." None of us took this little episode to heart. 3 days later was the kindergarten open day, when all parents could visit the school, play games with the children, and have lunch together. In the morning, the three of us set off for the kindergarten together. Lucas and I held our son's hands on either side, listening to him chatter away. "Today, there's my favorite juice at the kindergarten. Mom and Dad, you must try it, Dad. Can you help me build a castle today?" Lydia said his dad is really good at building with blocks, but I don't believe it. "Today, you have to build something even more amazing than his dad, Lucas," and I gently responded to his words, completely unaware that a woman wearing a hat was following us at a distance, neither too close nor too far. At that moment, I was watching my son build a Lego castle when I suddenly heard screams coming from the direction of the cafeteria. Lucas reacted faster than I did, and as he rushed over, he saw a woman pouring powder into a juice container. Next to her was the cafeteria lady who had caught her in the act. "Whose parent are you? How could you just add something to the food like that? Call the police. Don't let her get away." In the struggle, the woman's hat fell off, revealing a face we all recognized. It was unmistakably Bella. "Simon just said he wanted orange juice." I felt a chill run through my body. Lucas's grip on her wrist was almost strong enough to crush bone. The white medicine bottle fell to the ground, the label of promethazine gleaming coldly in the sunlight. "This hallucinogen, his voice colder than a scalpel, is enough to keep you in prison until your 30th birthday. Later, I heard that all of the Brown family's assets were liquidated in bankruptcy within a week. When Bella was taken away by the police on suspicion of poisoning, her father had a heart attack on the spot. Meanwhile, Lucas was crouching in front of the children's castle, letting his son smear cream all over his $200,000 suit. "Daddy, did the bad lady turn into light and disappear?" Simon asked, holding up his plastic sword. "No," he wiped the cream off his son's nose. "She became a case on the legal channel." When Simon lifted his little sister over his head, I finally understood what Lucas meant by bloodline dominance. 5-year-old Sarah giggled as she tugged at her brother's ear, looking just like a little mouse that had just stolen some oil. Sarah, put down your brother's limited edition headphones. I chased after her with a milk bottle into the garden, only to find the 15-year-old CEO kneeling on one knee, patiently teaching his sister how to build a castle with Legos. On the back of his hoodie was printed, #1 Big Brother in the Universe, which Sarah had secretly drawn with crayons during last month's parent-teacher conference. Lucas crouched among the sunflowers pretending to be a mushroom, clutching the pink hair bow his daughter had rejected. Honey, she just said the hair clip Daddy picked looks like a mutated fluttering moth. For someone who was, after all, the CEO of the Smith family conglomerate, he looked as pitiful as a child who'd had his candy snatched away. As dusk settled over the swing set, we pulled out the yellowed photo album. Sarah pointed at the gloomy young Simon in the photo and exclaimed, "Who is this fierce-looking big brother?" Her older brother quickly closed the album, his ears turning red as he changed the subject. "Want to see the surveillance footage of Dad tearing into that green tea girl back in the day?" Moonlight fell into the lemon tea as I watched the siblings play fighting outside the floor-to-ceiling window. Simon always left the top 2 buttons of his school uniform undone, a clay star necklace from his sister hanging around his neck. A medal Sarah had molded for him last year with kindergarten modeling clay when he was honored as a provincial model student, who's going to the parent-teacher conference next week. Lucas handed me a peeled chestnut. Our son is giving a speech as an outstanding graduate, and our daughter is performing Dig Dig Dig, Let's Decide by Rock Paper Scissors, I said with a laugh, clasping the wedding ring on his ring finger, the inscription, Head Keeper, on the inside pressing into my palm. Suddenly, cheers erupted from the second floor. Sarah's brother was using a 3D printer to make her a glowing fairy wand. The night breeze lifted the corner of the boy's shirt, revealing a faint scar on his waist. It was left 3 years ago when he shielded his younger sister from an oncoming bicycle. Now, a small sunflower was tattooed over the scar, hiding his sister's crooked handwriting beneath it. "Big brother is the best, Mom." Simon suddenly leaned out from the balcony. The 15-year-old boy stood against the moonlight, holding his sleeping sister in his arms. "Can you make sweet and sour pork ribs tomorrow?" The girls in my class said. "Got it, Chef Smith's improved version, no scallions." I interrupted with a smile, watching the familiar blush rise to the tips of his ears. "It's truly wonderful seeing this child finally break free from the original storyline and grow into a warm-hearted person fills me with endless pride." Lucas then wrapped his arm around my waist, as if seeing through my thoughts, and said to me, "Everything is the best arrangement now, isn't it?" "Yes, all of this is the best arrangement." After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. I transmigrated into the male lead Charles's mother in a tragic romance novel. In the future, he not only becomes chauvinistic but also overly sensitive, repeatedly driving his wife away and subjecting her to both physical and emotional torment. To correct his personality, I turned into a troublemaker, teaming up with a beagle to constantly push his limits and test his sanity. After the female lead Lily got together with Charles, she suddenly asked him, "Baby, do you think I'm being unreasonable?" Charles looked up at the sky at a 45-degree angle and let out a long sigh. "Compared to my mom and CC, you're like a rookie." The moment I opened my eyes, I had become the male lead's mother, Susan. In the original story, Susan discovered her husband's infidelity right after giving birth. As soon as her postpartum confinement period ended, she had her family give the scumbag a good beating, then took the protagonist and filed for divorce. The scumbag was left with nothing. And with her parents' help, Susan raised Charles until he was 1.5 years old. The day I transmigrated into this world was the day Susan took on the responsibility of raising the child all by herself. The male protagonist, who was domineering and awe-inspiring in the book, was now just a chubby toddler still in diapers, barely able to walk steadily. My only mission after crossing over is to change the original angsty plot into a normal sweet story. Let Charles and Lily avoid all those unnecessary and painful plotlines that torment both body and mind. I glanced at the big-eyed, adorable baby beside me chewing on its foot and let out a long sigh. The task ahead is long and arduous. At the age of 2, Charles was already able to walk steadily. This meant he had become a mobile troublemaking machine. He began wreaking havoc on everything he could get his hands on, including but not limited to the living room trash can, the kitchen trash can, The bathroom trash can, and the toilet, the coffee table is a particularly problematic area. If I'm not careful, Charles turns into a master of table clearing, spreading everything on the coffee table all over the floor. When I walked out of the bedroom, I was faced with a complete mess. The culprit was sitting on the floor, enthusiastically tearing up paper and playing. "Charles," I said angrily as I walked up to him, pulled him up from the floor, laid him across my knee, and gave him 2 firm spanks on his bottom. After being spanked, Charles pouted, his eyes reddened, and a sharp cry burst out from his throat. He was crying and still watching my expression through his fingers, not stopping his sobs for a moment. I didn't indulge him either. I plopped down on the ground and cried even louder than he did. Life is unbearable. Seeing me cry so loudly, Charles was dumbfounded, staring at me with his mouth agape, completely bewildered. Not only did I cry, but I also imitated his usual tantrum behavior, lying on the floor, rolling around, and flailing my arms and legs non-stop. The main strategy is to fight fire with fire. No matter how clever Charles is, he's just a 2-year-old kid. His single-core processor couldn't figure out what to do, and his CPU was practically overheating. The louder I cried, the more Charles's face scrunched up. He covered his ears with his little hands and shook his head repeatedly. He finally couldn't withstand my incessant nagging and stumbled over to me, planting kisses all over my face. He couldn't speak clearly yet, so this was his way of apologizing. I covered my eyes with one hand, pretending to cry, while pointing at the mess on the floor with the other. Charles tried to play dumb, clinging to my arm and saying sweetly, love mommy, this little rascal made such a mess at home. If I don't teach him a lesson, he'll only get worse in the future." I imitated his manner, angrily dodging his kiss. Then, from the corner of the living room, I pulled out the basket where he keeps his toys and dumped all of them onto the floor. He got anxious, stumbling over to pick up his favorite toy car, and screamed at me. I had Tonesy modify my voice data for me and cried at him in a dolphin-like pitch for 5 minutes. Completely overwhelmed by me, Charles was at a loss. Urged by my dolphin-like crying, he reluctantly put his toys away, tidied up everything on the floor, and returned all the trash to the bin. From that day on, whenever Charles dared to mess things up, whether at home or outside, I would force him to listen to my dolphin-like crying and then make him clean up the mess himself. Over time, Charles no longer dared to be mischievous. Charles started learning to recognize characters at the age of 2, and by the time he was 3, he could already understand the meanings of some words. In order to correct his male chauvinism, I began to intensely manipulate him. "Charles, mommy can't carry this. Can you help, please?" Is Charles the most well-behaved little kid in the world? Charles is a real man, and a real man should stand tall and firm, right? With my words and crazy flattery, I had Charles completely wrapped around my finger, following me around every day. By the time Charles turned 4 and started kindergarten with other children, all my hard work over the years finally paid off. The kindergarten teacher said that Charles was the best-behaved child in the class. Not only can he eat by himself, but he is also very particular about hygiene. Whenever he sees trash on the ground, he picks it up and throws it into the trash can. Moreover, Charles never bullies girls. He always says, "I am a man, and a man should help others, protect the weak, and never bully anyone." Under his subtle influence, the atmosphere in the class is excellent. Even if the children have conflicts or disagreements, they don't last long. The only thing that the kindergarten teacher doesn't quite understand, Charles learns quickly whether it's reading or arithmetic, but when it comes to singing, he always ends up hitting high notes as he goes along. Among a chorus of soft, childlike voices, this high note stands out quite abruptly. The teacher has corrected him many times, but it hasn't helped. He still ends up raising the pitch as he sings. I hung up the phone guiltily. I had no idea. After 2 years in kindergarten, Charles picked up his little backpack and grew into a proud elementary school student. Under my careful guidance, the 6-year-old boy has already started learning to do laundry, cook, and clean. Of course, he doesn't work for free, besides daily praise and compliments. If he goes a whole day without throwing unreasonable tantrums or screaming loudly, he gets an extra coin in his piggy bank. Every night before bed, the little one shakes his piggy bank, listens to the jingling sound inside, and smiles with delight. As the saying goes, a hard-working child at home often leads to a lazy mother. After raising Charles to be an all-around capable son, I began my ultimate plan. What should one do after relying on their parents? Of course, the answer is to rely on the children, to avoid making Charles feel awkward. I deliberately chose the day before Mother's Day to go to Charles's room and stared at him with a grave expression. Charles was so unnerved by my gaze that he quietly asked, "Mom, what's wrong?" With tears in my eyes, I trembled as I gently touched Charles's little head and said in a choked voice, "Back in the day, when I was holding you and walking on the street, I had no idea what to do. Fortunately, Mom pulled through, and you grew up healthy. Mom is very happy." Before the words were even finished, my tears fell. I hugged his warm little body and cried with such genuine emotion. Charles was clearly moved by me. He also cried and snuggled into my arms, calling out repeatedly, "Mom, Mom, please don't cry, woo woo." "So, Charles, can you promise Mom one small request?" At 6:30 the next morning, Charles was woken by the alarm clock, rubbing his eyes. He sat on the bed for a while before finally remembering what he had to do today. He changed his clothes, washed up, put on the small apron he had prepared the night before, and dove straight into the kitchen. He rinsed the rice to make porridge, placed the steamed buns in the steamer, peeled the potatoes, and used a slicing tool to cut uniformly thick potato slices, soaking them in a basin. With that, the breakfast preparations were complete. Charles glanced seriously at his smartwatch. It was 6:55. He took a few quick steps to the master bedroom, wiped his wet hands on his apron, turned the doorknob, and walked over to the person whose head was buried under the blanket, forcefully pulling the covers off. "Time to get up. The sun is already up." With my eyes closed, I snatched the blanket back from him and mumbled, "Just 5 more minutes." Charles couldn't wake someone pretending to be asleep, so he returned to the kitchen and drained the water from the potato slices. Hot pan, cool oil. Add potatoes when the oil is hot. Charles skillfully stir-fries the potato slices. Once they are partially cooked, add a little water, then add the seasonings one by one. A delicious plate of stir-fried potatoes is ready. After Charles finished cooking, he returned to the master bedroom and once again engaged in a battle with me over the blanket. In the end, the 6-year-old little parent was completely defeated. That's right. Today is not only Mother's Day but also the parent-child role reversal game day that I proposed. Today, Charles is the parent, and I am the child. He is responsible for 3 meals a day, cleaning, and taking care of the kids. I am responsible for eating, drinking, having fun, and being taken out to play by the parent, Charles. Not long after it started, I already regret it. The reason is simple. If Charles can stick to playing the role of the parent for a day, I will take him to his favorite amusement park for the entire day. At 8:30, under Charles's persistent pestering, I stretched 7 or 8 times in bed and finally got up. I sat on the small stool, and my messy, bird's nest-like hair gave Charles, who was holding a comb, a headache. He had seen me comb my hair before and knew that you should start from the ends and slowly work your way through the tangles. He was not skilled, but very careful, and he didn't hurt me at all. It took him 10 minutes to finally tie my hair into a low ponytail. By the time I sat down at the table, I was faced with a plate of already cold potato slices, 2 steamed buns that had been left in the steamer for too long and were soaked through, and a bowl of porridge so thick you could stand chopsticks in it. Charles guiltily picked up the potato slices and put them in the microwave to heat up. I looked at the steamed buns, pouted, and started to fuss. "I don't want to eat steamed buns. I want meat buns, meat buns." Charles quickly tried to calm me down. "Mom, the steamed bun shop is closed. How about I buy you some meat buns tomorrow?" I threw down my chopsticks. "I want to eat buns now. I want to eat them. I want to eat buns." Charles covered his head in distress. "Mom, no child is like you." I casually took out my phone and found a video from Baidu NetDisc of Charles crying for meat buns when he was in kindergarten. High definition 1080p. And even the sound of him crying and shouting for meat buns, watching the screaming and crying child on the screen, Charles fell silent. He silently walked over to the little golden piggy bank, pulled out the plug at the bottom, gritted his teeth, stomped his foot, and reluctantly counted out 4 coins twice. 10 minutes later, a freshly steamed pork and scallion bun was handed to me. I took a bite and threw the bun back onto the table. "This one doesn't taste good. I want to eat the meat sauce bun." Charles broke down crying in anger. "Mom, you're too much." I leisurely dragged the progress bar. The scene froze on Charles throwing the steamed buns onto the table and bouncing like a fish in his high chair. Charles's crying abruptly stopped, starting from Mother's Day when Charles was 6 years old. There were a few days each week when our roles would reverse, to leave Charles with some beautiful childhood memories. On his 8th birthday, I spent a hefty sum of 500 to bring home a little puppy from the kennel. Charles came home from school and, upon seeing the adorable little dog lying on the carpet, happily hugged my leg and exclaimed loudly, "Mom, you're the best mom in the world. I hope you'll still say that 2 months from now." In Charles's arms was unmistakably a 1-month-old beagle puppy. Charles named the little beagle CC. I struggled hard to suppress my wildly rising smile. A 1-month-old puppy is indeed adorable. Whimpering with its big, shiny eyes constantly being cute, and it's both fragrant and soft. Every day after school, Charles throws down his backpack and runs to the doghouse to play with the little puppy. After dinner, he also takes CC out to play. They were running happily under the sunset, with Charles in the lead and CC following behind. At that time, Charles still didn't know why the uncles and aunties in the neighborhood looked at him with a hint of pity in their eyes. 2 months later, CC began to develop fully lined eyes, and its cries evolved from inging to WR WR WR. Charles's nightmare had begun. Charles never thought about why there could be such a noisy dog. The lively and adorable puppy, BB, turned into the Beagle Demon King just after 3 months. CC, with his baby teeth, was just like a 2-year-old Charles, a fully automatic troublemaker. CC was even stronger. He would also keep barking, WR WR, non-stop, and when Charles was little, he would just throw whatever he could reach onto the floor, without actually destroying anything. CC is different. Wherever it goes, it leaves nothing untouched, not a blade of grass or a single tile. It frantically chews on everything, door frames, table legs, potted plants. There's nothing it can't wreck, only things it can't reach. Every day, Charles brings tattered textbooks to class, and the cuffs of his school uniform are full of bite marks. His classmates have started to mock him. "Hey, how did a beggar end up in our class? Torn books, torn clothes. Charles, is your family really in the trash-picking business?" Faced with his classmates' ridicule, Charles didn't get angry. He leaned against the wall, his eyes vacant, while his hand continued to scribble and draw. His desk mate snatched the paper away when he wasn't paying attention. The page was filled with, "Help me," which startled his desk mate, crying and shouting. He threw the paper away and ran to tell the teacher. When Teacher Monica saw the paper covered with, "Help me," she thought Charles was a victim of domestic violence. After school that afternoon, she took his hand and indignantly walked him home. Charles pulled the key from his collar and turned the doorknob. He had just opened the door a crack and glanced inside when he closed his eyes in pain. Charles silently closed the door to his home, his small body firmly blocking the entrance. "Teacher, I'm really fine. My mom loves me so much. Please believe me, Ms. Monica." The more he acted this way, the more it pained Ms. Monica. Ms. Monica crouched down, gently patting Charles's little head, forcing a smile to comfort him. "It's okay, Charles, the teacher is here. Even your mother can't hit you for no reason. Charles, trust me, I will protect you." Charles was almost in tears. "Teacher, I believe you, but I'm really fine. Please go home, okay? Go home, I'm begging you, teacher." Teacher Monica held his shoulders and said with a serious expression, "Since the teacher said they would visit, they must have a good talk with your mother. Charles, you must remember that the best way to overcome difficulties is to face them. Open the door." Charles felt utterly hopeless, trembling as he unlocked the door with his key. Teacher Monica gave him an encouraging smile, pulled open the door handle, and strode inside. 3 seconds later, Teacher Monica rushed out of the room. She pressed herself against the door, gasping for breath, and looked back in terror as if something dreadful was chasing her. She was like a fawn that had mistakenly wandered into a slaughterhouse, her eyes filled with fear and confusion. After catching her breath, Teacher Monica finally threw out a sentence, "Charles, have your mother come see me at school tomorrow." Then she hurriedly left. Charles crouched on the ground, holding his head and crying bitterly. It's over. His image is completely ruined. That night, an absolutely explosive thread suddenly appeared on the local forum. The thread starter's title was absolutely shocking. Who would have thought? I went to a student's home for a visit, took just 2 steps inside, and stepped in 2 piles of dog poop. I am a teacher, and I consider myself quite dedicated to my work. this afternoon, a student came to my office and said that his desk mate had been writing, "Help me," on a piece of paper. I went to check, and the situation was indeed true, so I arranged for a home visit after school. This student usually has a stable personality, doesn't cry or make a fuss, and is very likable. The original poster thought he was witnessing domestic violence and was extremely angry, so he rushed straight to their doorstep. The student opened the door, took one look, and urged me to leave quickly. I was so foolish, really. If only I had listened to his advice, I wouldn't have seen such a shocking scene. The following text is highly vivid. Fellow forum users who are eating or drinking, please proceed with caution. Not only did I not heed the student's advice, but I also urged him to face his fears. The student remained silent and opened the door. The moment I stepped inside, my foot landed on something soft, and a foul smell that shot straight to the top of my head hit me. My body, following its momentum, took a second step, and again, it was the same soft sensation underfoot, with the stench growing even stronger. The student's home was in complete disarray, with rags, scorched yellow cotton, and torn-up shredded toilet paper scattered all over the floor. There was a large hole in the middle of the sofa's backrest, and the legs of the coffee table and dining table were scarred and barely holding up. The air was filled with a strong, foul odor that almost made me suffocate. Before I could even react, a dog's head popped out from behind the sofa, barking at me wildly, which scared me so much that I immediately turned and ran. I've thrown away the shoes I wore today. They were expensive, and it hurts, but I really don't want them anymore. Every time I see those shoes, I'm reminded of that spine-chilling feeling on my feet. Enough said. I'm going to cry for a bit. As soon as the post was published, the first comment was snatched by a genius. 1L, I bet 50 cents that the OP definitely ran into a beagle. 2L, bench, why are you so sure? Floor above, aren't beagles pretty cute? 3L, because I also have a beagle at home. Floor above, my beagle just had puppies recently. Do you want one? Free of charge. 4L, that good, I'll take one. 5L, damn, got scammed again. This city has one more heartbroken person. A day later, 2L posted angrily on the forum, cursing at 1L. The scammer promised to deliver a puppy, but instead dumped their 1-year-old beagle at my doorstep. Now they've blocked me on WeChat and won't answer calls. What a huge scammer. There's a bunch of ha below, and the second commenter is asking everyone if they want a dog. No, can't afford it. If you want one, OP, I can give you my beagle. I saw the disastrous situation at home clearly through the surveillance camera mounted on the ceiling. Charles put CC into the cage, crying while cleaning up. I couldn't bear to see him crying, so I had to turn around and close my eyes. Charles was mopping the floor with great effort, while the Beagle Demon King, locked in the cage, was very unhappy and provided background music with his AOWR howls. After finally finishing cleaning the floor, Charles instantly broke down upon hearing CC's singing. He knelt on the freshly mopped floor, sobbing uncontrollably, and when he was too tired to cry, he continued wiping the walls. At an age when he couldn't even control wetting the bed, Charles gradually learned to manage himself. In the evening, when I came home with Charles's favorite egg tarts, he had already fallen asleep hugging the dog crate. CC nestled his head close to him, sleeping by his side. I carried Charles into the bathroom, placed him on the small stool, and quickly gave him a quick bath. Charles woke up as soon as I entered the room, but he was so tired he could barely keep his eyes open, and his head rested against the bathroom tiles as he fell fast asleep. Early the next morning, Charles rushed to my bedside, crying loudly, "Mom, can we give CC away? I really can't take it anymore." I closed my eyes and skillfully stroked my silly son's hair. "Charles, since you chose to raise CC in the first place, CC is part of our family. You can't just give CC away because he's still young and doesn't understand things. Mom knows that Charles is the most responsible man and will definitely teach CC well, right?" Charles was silent for a long time, then suddenly whispered, "But Mom, didn't you buy CC? Oh, so now he's trying to shift the blame. You're growing up, young man." "That's right, I did buy CC, but the decision to let CC live with us was yours, Charles." I immediately turned the pot over and placed it back on his head. Charles is still young, so it's a good opportunity for him to take the blame and gain some experience. He seemed to realize something was off. yet also felt like he had forgotten something. His mind was a jumbled mess as he groggily headed off to school. It wasn't until he arrived at school that Charles remembered. He had forgotten to tell his mom that teacher Monica wanted to see her. Thinking of the suffocating scene when he opened the door yesterday afternoon, along with the two eerie footprints on the floor. Charles only hoped that teacher Monica wouldn't be left with any psychological trauma. After CC turned 1, her personality finally became a bit more steady, and the amount of time she spent fussing gradually decreased. This was a relief for both Charles and me. Charles has also gradually gotten used to being CC's dad while occasionally taking on the role of my mom in daily life. After learning how to search for information online, the first term he looked up was how to scientifically raise a beagle. To keep CC quieter, Charles carefully noted down how to properly expend a beagle's energy. At the same time, he also learned about the beagle's alternative names, Big Ears the bizarre donkey. From that day on, Charles got up early every day to cook porridge, rode his bicycle, and took CC out for a walk. His legs are too short now to outrun the soon-to-be adult nuclear-powered donkey, so he can only ride a bicycle to walk CC. He does it twice a day, rain or shine. I have to say, such high-intensity exercise really calmed CC down. There's just one thing, CC often chases after other dogs' tails. It's not for friendly interaction, nor is it about finding a cute dog. It just wants to sit on the production line and eat. Charles wished he could kneel down and beg it to stop eating. It was no use at all, now. With a sudden burst of energy, CC could easily take down a 100-pound golden retriever. Little Charles was no match for it. In 3rd grade, Charles took CC to the park to play. He was sitting on the lawn, while CC, wagging a pair of big ears, was happily running around, howling, with the WR sound echoing throughout the park. Charles had already given in. He accepted the reality. As long as CC wasn't howling to snatch the hot dog from his friend's hand, he was grateful. Wow. That dog is so cute. What breed is it? I've never seen one like that before. Charles didn't even turn his head, certain they weren't talking about his stubborn mule of a dog. CC darted through the crowd like the wind, leaped onto Charles's back, and frantically tugged at his coat, howling for water. The big-eared, strange-looking donkey suddenly let out a fierce cry, making the young women who had intended to pet it stop in their tracks. They exchanged uneasy glances. Did it just make a sound? Could it bite? Maybe we shouldn't pet it after all. But it's really cute. Look at its big eyes and adorable ears. Besides, dogs are supposed to bark. You know, a young woman, clearly a dog lover, was completely smitten by CC's looks and insisted on coming over to pet him. Her friends couldn't dissuade her, so they had no choice but to follow her and politely ask Charles, "Little one, is this your family's dog?" Charles said skillfully, "It's my dog, feel free to pet it. It definitely won't bite." The young lady, who particularly loves small dogs, rushed over immediately, happily pinched CC's big ears, and cradled its head while petting it over and over. "Wow, so well behaved. What's its name?" "Little one, it's called CC." The young lady held CC's paw and said happily, "CC, CC, you're so well behaved. Such a good dog." Seeing how well behaved CC was, the young lady's friends also let their guard down, gathering around CC, petting it from head to tail, and occasionally squeezing its paws. Watching CC being surrounded by several young ladies, Charles suddenly realized that this was an excellent opportunity to escape from the clutches of the great demon king. CC, actions speak louder than words. Charles shoved the dog leash into the young woman's hand, tossed out a "it's yours," hopped on his bicycle, and quickly rode away from the scene. All that was left was the bewildered young woman and her friends, staring at CC, who was lying on her back with her belly exposed, and then at the leash in her hand. The young woman snapped back to reality and met CC's big, bright eyes. Her heart softened, and she gently patted CC's head. "CC, how about big sister takes you home?" "Okay." CC understood the words, "go home." It lifted its head and looked around for Charles. Only a faint scent lingered in the air. Charles was nowhere to be seen. How dare someone abandon the mighty beagle? CC angrily dug at the ground a few times and howled at the sky. WR. It lowered its dog head, sniffing the patch of grass where Charles had just been sitting, then raised its head and sniffed around. It chose a direction and shot out like an arrow, dragging the long leash behind it, racing along the scent trail left by Charles. The young lady simply couldn't keep up with it and could only watch helplessly as CC disappeared into the crowd. Charles threw down his bicycle, ran a few steps back home, locked the door, and leaped onto the sofa in one swift motion, singing loudly, "Today is a good day." He bounced wildly on the sofa as he sang. I rushed out of the kitchen, holding a spatula. "Get down right now. Are you trying to rebel?" Charles jumped off the sofa, hugged my leg tightly, crying and laughing at the same time. "Mom, I gave CC away." I was overjoyed. "Really? You really gave CC away?" "Honestly. I even gave the leash to them." Charles grinned from ear to ear. I quickly took off my apron. "Then why bother cooking? Let's go, let's go. Mom will take you out to eat and celebrate properly." The two of us, mother and child, chatted and laughed as we changed our clothes, ready to go out for a nice meal. Just as we opened the front door, we saw CC crouching at the doorstep, raising its paw as if about to scratch the door. Seeing us, CC took a deep breath, gathering his energy in his dantian, WR. The braying of the donkey echoed through the entire hallway, and the neighbors' angry shouts could be heard from next door. We sheepishly led CC back into the house. Charles silently took off CC's leash, and I silently put on my apron and went into the kitchen. From that day on, Charles never mentioned giving CC away again. If he were to fall from heaven into hell one more time, he would truly break down. From elementary school to high school, Charles was widely regarded as the most even-tempered and emotionally stable person in his class. No matter what happens, he remains calm, quickly finds solutions, and is deeply trusted by everyone. On top of that, he is good-looking and an academic achiever, receiving a large stack of love letters every month. Charles firmly rejected everyone who confessed their feelings to him. The reason is simple. He has to go home to take care of his two demanding parents and focus on his studies, leaving no extra energy for a relationship. After a busy day, Charles returned home, cleaned up after CC, who couldn't go outside anymore, poured dog food and nutrients for it, and refilled the water. After finishing, he carried his backpack into his elderly mother's room. I leaned against the headboard scrolling through my phone, with snacks and drinks scattered all around me. Charles deftly pulled out the bed desk, took out the pre-packaged noodles from his backpack, removed the lid, and stirred it evenly. Spicy snail noodles with extra chili, sour bamboo shoots, and peanuts, mint milk green tea with less ice, 30% sugar, and coconut jelly. Are there any grilled gluten skewers from the back gate of the school with extra spice and no missing ones? I put down my phone and said with a playful grin, "Thanks, sweetie, Mom loves you." Mwah. Charles's ears turned red. "I'm not a kid anymore. Why are you still treating me like one?" I said confidently. "So what? Even if you're 70 or 80, you'll still be my precious son." The brat's ears were completely red, but he still wouldn't admit it. All right, just let me know when you're done eating. I'll take care of the cleanup." "Charles is so good. Thank you." Charles put on his apron, walked into the kitchen, steamed rice, prepared the ingredients, and stir-fried the dishes with great skill. The dishes he cooked were a feast for the eyes, nose, and taste buds. I lay on the bed and shouted, "Charles, come here, come here." CC, lying in the doghouse, chimed in as if on cue, barking along, WR. Charles put down the spatula and cursed with a laugh. "You two are such a handful." Charles, WR, coming, stop calling me like you're summoning a spirit. Charles did very well in the college entrance exam and was successfully admitted to a key university in the provincial capital. His teachers and classmates were curious about why Charles didn't choose a university in another province, and I was also very curious. At the celebration banquet for his admission, Charles gave us the answer. Holding the microphone, he spoke with a serious tone. "I have come this far, and I must thank one person, and that is my mother, Ms. Susan. She is not a strict or gentle mother in the traditional sense. She is like the Yellow River. Only those who withstand the test can be her good child. She never spoiled me since I was young. Maybe she thought I wouldn't remember, but my memory is really good. I remember everything. She has always taught me to be a real man, and for all these years, I have been walking on this path. From her, I learned the most important qualities of a man: responsibility and accountability. I can take advantage of the holidays to explore the magnificent landscapes of our country, and I can also travel to see the great rivers and mountains after work. But before I step into society, establish a career, and start a family, I still want to spend more time with her. Mom, thank you for giving me life. And thank you for loving me. I love you too. With tears in my eyes, I smiled and said to him, Mom loves you too. When Charles was in his sophomore year, CC suddenly passed away. I rushed CC to the pet hospital, and on the way, I called Charles. As soon as the call connected, my tears started falling. Charles, come back quickly, CC is not doing well. Charles took a taxi back overnight. When he arrived at the pet hospital, looking travel-worn, CC was lying on the sickbed, panting heavily. Seeing Charles appear, CC perked up immediately. It raised its head, let out a soft, WER sound twice, and looked at Charles with moist eyes. We all know it's just a final flicker of life. Charles leaned over the bedside, gently stroked CC's head. CC nudged his hand with its head and peacefully closed its eyes. Charles held CC's gradually cooling body, crying his heart out. I kept patting his back, trying to comfort him a little. That once so vocal CC, how did it become such a small box? Charles kept a small portion of ashes and a few strands of fur, placing them in a star-shaped bottle that he carried with him at all times. After graduating from college, Charles and his classmates started a small company together. After struggling through 2 chaotic years, their company finally stabilized, and Charles began to fulfill his promise, taking me and CC to explore the magnificent landscapes of our country. During the trip, we met Lily, who was traveling with her parents, while the older ones among us were busy finding spots to take photos. The 2 young ones naturally became close, after years of my influence. Charles is no longer the chauvinistic and emotionally unstable male lead from the original story. He is not only mature, steady, handsome, and charming, but also emotionally stable, calm, and composed when facing challenges. Most importantly, he deeply respects women. Lily's admiration for him began with his appearance, grew with his talent, connected through his personality, endured because of his kindness, and was ultimately sealed by his character, as their interactions gradually increased. The beautiful, gentle, and graceful Lily also captured Charles's attention. 2 equally outstanding and hard-working young people naturally came together. I quietly led Lily's parents away, keeping my achievements and reputation hidden. After officially starting to date, Lily became even more certain that she had truly found a treasure. Charles is not only genuine but also a perfect boyfriend in every way. He not only remembers all the anniversaries and her menstrual cycle but is also an excellent cook. After getting together with Lily, Charles voluntarily handed over his savings and salary card, taking charge of everything both inside and outside the home, practically spoiling Lily rotten. Even Lily's parents, who initially had reservations about Charles coming from a single-parent family, couldn't help but grasp his hands after seeing Lily's daily life and say, "Good child, you've worked hard." Charles touched his nose sheepishly. "It's the least I could do. Lily is the apple of your eyes, and since we're together, of course I should cherish her properly." His words left the elderly couple so overjoyed they could hardly speak, and they immediately started discussing wedding plans with me. After the busy wedding, Lily lay in Charles's arms and asked in a sweet voice, "Darling, do you think I'm being unreasonable?" Charles looked up at a 45-degree angle to the sky and let out a long sigh. "Compared to my mom and CC, you're just like a rookie." Charles skillfully pulled out his phone from the bedside drawer and showed the surveillance footage to Lily. In the footage, there was a beagle barking loudly with a WER sound, and Mrs. Susan lying on the sofa, calling out loudly for Charles. The duet formed by one person and one dog was particularly jarring, with little Charles running back and forth like a fool, serving 2 demanding masters. Lily wiped the cold sweat from her forehead. "Haha, Mom is indeed quite lively. I'm going to the restroom." Lily rushed into the restroom, opened her phone, and sent a message to the kennel staff. "Hello, I don't want the beagle anymore. Can I exchange it for another dog?" The dog seller replied instantly. "Too late. The door is open." Charles lay on the bed, waiting for his wedding night. Suddenly, he seemed to hear a WER sound. The fear of being dominated by the Beagle Demon King surged in his heart once again. It must be an illusion, right? After hearing the 2 stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.